How's it going, everyone? Welcome to another Storytime video. And for the first time on this channel, I'm going to tell you a high school story. This is actually something I wanted to talk about for a while, because it kind of demonstrates some of the issues with the school system, or at least competitive schools. So without any further ado, let's get into the story. So for high school, I went to a super competitive school. It was a magnet school, and no one had a guaranteed way of getting into the school unless they were local and applied to the school, but it was still a magnet school. You could not get into the school based off of where you live. It was also very high ranked. And I'm not trying to say, oh, I went to a better school than you, because quite frankly, even though it was a pretty good school, think of it this way. By going to my school, we exchanged one set of problems for another set of problems. I know this may not be relatable in any sense, but it is still crazy and you want to stay tuned. You know how in most high schools, the last year or senior year is very laid back? Well, that's a very stressful year at my high school, or at least where I went to, because I graduated. And I'll tell you, it was not something I really liked. Like, sure, in the end we get a lot of college credits from it, but it was absolute torture. In some respects, I wish I didn't go through it, but in others, I'm kinda glad I went through it. Anyways, because of how competitive my high school was, people were very careful about what classes they took. Everyone, or at least the people who cared, they had a big phobia of taking honors or regular classes. Because you see, in my high school, our GPAs, our grade point averages, were on a 6.0 scale. Anything college level, like, AP, classes taken at another college, IB. If you got an A in those classes, you get 6 points. But an A in an honors class would only give you 4.5 points, and a regular class would give you just 4. And this was one of the biggest issues. One year, there was this one girl who had one of the highest GPAs in the entire class, and the only reason she was not the valedictorian is because she took chorus. That's how bad it was. If she did not take chorus, she would have been valedictorian. And that's not even adding class, we're removing a class here. That's how bad it was. In fact, my high school was actually divided into different programs. The people in the computer science program, they were upset because their curriculum involved a ton of regular level classes. They felt cheated because anyone at the IB program at my school who took an easy algebra level math class for 6 points had a better chance of being high ranked than a person who took classes in Java, JavaScript, MySQL, Python, you name it. That's absolutely ridiculous. Although to be fair, in the end, the computer science kids got more practical knowledge out of what they learned. And quite frankly, they learned enough to not even have to go to college. But that's besides the point. It was so competitive, every credit counted. You had to find every way to get any advantage you could over your other classmates. And in my state, there's this public school online that anyone can go to take extra classes. The grades you got in those classes would count for actual high school credit. So during my freshman year, on top of taking AP Physics and AP World History, everyone who was trying to get ahead of our peers, they took AP classes online, mostly AP Psychology. In the second year of high school, the sophomore year, we began to start being allowed to take dual enrollment, or in other words, we could take actual college classes with the local community college. A lot of the kids who wanted to be competitive, they took classes there. By this point, it wasn't really clear who was going to be at the top of the class by the end of our senior year, but there was one kid who had an idea. He discovered something that no one knew, and I'll call this kid Nicholas. I actually had a friend named Nicholas. He's actually really cool, but he has nothing to do with this kid. Nicholas here discovered that at a local private school, where everyone at my school went to take prep classes for the SAT, very important test in the United States for college admissions. You could take extra high school classes there. If you gave them enough money, they'll find a teacher, and you could take AP classes that you could not take on the online public school that a lot of people took classes with. So he did that, unbeknownst to a lot of people, and he was kind of talking about it. He talked about it with his close friends, but the word spread to other people in the class, mostly people who were really competitive about valedictorian. Everyone wanted to be valedictorian, or at least at the beginning of our freshman year. When 400-ish people want to be valedictorian, you know that only one person can, and over time, a lot of people are going to trip on a bunch of rocks and hurt their chances, but the people who were still in the race, they discovered this and started doing the same thing. Now, I don't know exactly how many people did this, but I know that the top 3 people at the end of my senior year, they all did it. And for the purpose of the story, the other 2 people in the top 3, other than Nicholas, were Nicole and Paul. Paul was a big player for the valedictorian throughout this time, and everyone liked him. He was very humble, he was very nice, respectful, the ideal student. They were trying to find any advantage class-wise that they could, and it ended up being so close that the GPAs were off by 100th each. If one person had a 5.412 GPA, another person had a 5.413 GPA. That's how close it was. And I'm not even exaggerating that. Maybe I use numbers that are close to where their GPAs were at, because that's actually around where they were. But you get the point. They calculated the GPA for valedictorian and salutatorian differently than how they calculated class rank. The slight difference ended up mattering, because you see, that one kid, Nicholas, the only reason he was number 1 in the class was because the other 2 top 3 students took some high school honors classes while they were in middle school. However, in calculating the GPAs for the valedictorian and salutatorian, they did not include high school classes taken in middle school. So what ended up happening is that Paul, who was number 3 in the class, ended up being valedictorian. Nicole, who was number 2, salutatorian, and Nicholas was nowhere. He was number 1 in the class, but not even salutatorian. When they announced the top 10 students in the class, and who was going to be the valedictorian and salutatorian, you could tell that he was upset. Now, I wasn't in the same room as him at the time, but everyone was talking about it. Just imagine being number 1 in the class, and not even being named salutatorian. Wow. So graduation comes around, everyone's happy, although Nicholas kind of looks a bit distraught. Like his face was reading, that could have been me. And to be frank, that actually really could have been him. So I guess the moral of this story is, first off, if you have a competitive high school, it's eventually going to get so competitive that it all boils down to money. And second off, don't tell people your secret. To be honest, I feel like Nicholas would have actually got on scot-free if he didn't tell other people about what he was doing. Maybe at the end of senior year he could have revealed it, but he revealed his secret, and everyone else, or at least 2 other people in the running against him, they copied him. So yeah. Do I think it's morally wrong? Not really. I don't think they did anything wrong themselves. It's just that it was a competitive race for valedictorian, and this is really the problem with competitive high schools. If you did not pay money to take extra classes, you stood no chance. And I'm not even exaggerating or hyperbolizing this. You had to pay like $500 for a class or something like that. I don't know exactly how much the classes were at the private school, but they definitely weren't cheap. Like they say, if you work hard, you can be valedictorian. But at my school, you had to do more than working hard. You had to work to your absolute maximum. I wish that really anyone could be a valedictorian, but that's just what happens when you get to competitive high school. So yeah, that's pretty much the story. It's a bit crazy because when you think of valedictorians, you don't really think that they had to pay to get into their position. But no, they had to pay. It wasn't even cheap. I'm getting really repetitive, so I think I should end it here. Anyways, so that's it for this story. If you'd like to listen to more Storytime videos, then be sure to subscribe. And if you hated it, don't forget to leave a dislike. I actually have quite a few crazy high school stories, just like this one. You should also follow me on Twitter at ZyphonYT, and join my Discord, link in the description. Also, be sure to check out some of my other videos. You can click on the video to the left. If you'd like to hear a story about the time that one of my classmates betrayed the entire class in elementary school. On the last day of school, for that matter. Just absolutely betrayed. You can also click on the right video if you'd like to hear a story about the time a teacher in middle school stabbed a student. Anyways, that's it. See ya. Peace.